The Galactic Empire descended on Earth like a dark cloud blotting out the sun for days. The skies were filled with massive ships, so enormous they dwarfed the tallest skyscraper cities, trembled as the people below looked up in awe and fear. No one knew what to expect, but the Empire made it clear that their presence was not one of peace. Their ships hovered above the Earth and broadcasted a message from their leader, Imperator Exalter. The voice boomed across every television and radio station worldwide. "We come in peace," he said, but his words were heavy with something more like a promise of dominance. "We offer you the chance to join us in the vast expanse of the galaxy, to share in the wonders of our civilization. But those who refuse shall know only destruction." Earth had no choice but to listen, and the world leaders convened to decide humanity's fate. The United Nations called an emergency session. Nations scrambled to send their representatives, while military forces across the globe began preparing for what might be an invasion. There was tension in the air as leaders debated fiercely. Some were drawn to the idea of joining the Empire, seeing it as a way to advance technology and secure their place in the galaxy. Others feared that this would mean the end of human freedom and sovereignty. "We have nothing to gain from submitting to their rule," said General Maria Torres, the renowned military leader, who was known for her strategic brilliance. "The Empire does not offer peace, it offers submission. We must fight this invasion before it is too late." But not everyone agreed. Some believed that Earth could negotiate with the Empire and possibly gain access to their advanced technology and resources without having to give up their independence. Walter's offer seemed too tempting to ignore. After all, what harm could a little cooperation with such a mighty force bring? The debate raged on for days, but deep down Maria knew that the Empire would not be satisfied with just an alliance. They wanted something more, something they were not willing to reveal to the public. There was more at stake than anyone realized. Soon the public began to notice something strange. The Empire's ships were not just sitting idle in the sky. They were moving systematically over every major city across the planet, and in the heart of Earth's major governments, the first signs of infiltration began to appear. Military officials began to receive encrypted messages from unknown sources showing detailed maps of strategic locations. Human infrastructure began to experience odd disturbances, strange electrical outages and glitches that couldn't be explained. The Empire had already begun its preparations beneath the surface, and no one except the few who had uncovered the truth understood how dire the situation had become. As the Empire's ships darkened the skies, humanity's leaders scrambled to prepare for the worst. But it was already too late. The Empire had already planted its foot on Earth, and it was only a matter of time before they would demand their first move. As the Empire's presence grew stronger across the globe, the whispers of betrayal began to spread throughout the highest levels of government. General Maria Torres couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. She had been suspicious of the Empire from the start. Their promise of peace seemed too perfect to be true, and the more she observed their actions, the more she saw their true intentions hidden beneath the surface. After all, what empire extends an olive branch without expecting something in return? The general began to quietly gather a small team of trusted allies within the military and intelligence communities to investigate the empire's motives. These men and women were some of the brightest minds on Earth, and they quickly began to dig into the empire's actions across the world. There were irregularities that no one had noticed before, secretive deals being made behind closed doors, unknown technology appearing in government facilities that no one had authorized. All of it pointed to something far more sinister than what was being presented to the public. As the resistance began to piece together the empire's true intentions, they discovered something terrifying. The empire didn't want to share knowledge with humanity. They wanted to exploit the planet's resources and control its people. Maria couldn't believe what she was reading. The empire's forces were already preparing for a complete takeover. They had plans to strip Earth of its most valuable materials and establish a puppet government to ensure the planet's subjugation for years to come. There was only one option. Now humanity had to resist, but it was too late to rely on traditional military forces alone. The empire's technology was far beyond anything Earth had ever seen. It was time for a new kind of war, A war fought in shadows, and whispers the resistance was born. Maria knew that the fight would be difficult, but the alternative was unthinkable. Earth would be enslaved unless they acted quickly. She secretly reached out to key individuals within her network, offering them the truth about the Empire's intentions and convincing them to join the cause. One by one, scientists, engineers, hackers, and former military officers stepped forward to aid her mission. They began to work in secret, utilizing every resource at their disposal to undermine the Empire's foothold on Earth. They couldn't fight the Empire head-on, not yet, but they could strike from the shadows and weaken the invaders from within. The first step was to disrupt the Empire's communications network. The resistance began hacking into their encrypted systems, planting false information, and redirecting important signals. It was a small victory, but a powerful one. It showed that the Empire wasn't invincible. After all, however, the Empire was quick to respond. Its surveillance increased, and the Resistance's movements became riskier with every passing day. The team knew that time was running out. They had to work quickly before the Empire realized they were being targeted. Maria's heart raced with every mission, every covert operation, every close call. It was a fight for humanity's very survival, and she knew the true battle had only just begun. The fate of the planet rested in the hands of a small group of rebels who had no choice but to outthink an empire that had never known defeat. The Resistance's actions were starting to make a difference, but the Empire was not a foe that could be easily defeated. Their response was swift and brutal. Xalter issued an order for a series of retaliatory strikes against Earth's major cities. The first to fall was New York City. Its skyline, once a symbol of human achievement, now crumbled under the weight of alien weaponry. The Empire unleashed devastating energy blasts that tore through buildings and shattered streets. It was a show of power meant to send a message to the rest of the world. The Resistance was not prepared for such an overwhelming force, but their resolve only hardened with each passing hour. The Empire had underestimated humanity's capacity to endure. The people of Earth didn't break. They rallied together. Even in the face of destruction, there was fear, yes, but there was also something else, an unshakable determination to survive and to fight back. The global community responded to the Empire's attack with a unified front. Governments around the world declared their support for the Resistance and started to mobilize their military forces to defend Earth's borders. The Empire may have superior technology, but humanity had something the Empire didn't. They had numbers and the will to fight for their freedom. At the same time, General Torres and her team continued their covert operations. The attacks on the Empire's infrastructure began to take a heavier toll. Their communications were increasingly disrupted. Their supply lines were cut off and key military assets were destroyed. The Resistance was using the Empire's own technology against them, and it was working. The battle between the two sides was not just one of brute force, but of intellect and cunning. The Resistance was growing more organized by the day. They were no longer just a group of rebels fighting in the shadows. They were becoming a real threat to the Empire. But the stakes had risen. Xalter was no longer content to simply watch from the sidelines. He took to the field, personally sending his most elite soldiers to hunt down the Resistance's leaders. One by one, he promised retribution, and he would stop at nothing to crush humanity's hope for independence. The Empire's attacks became more precise and deadly. They began hunting down Resistance cells across the globe and turning entire cities into war zones. But the Resistance had learned much from their earlier victories. They were no longer operating in isolation. Their network had expanded, and they now had allies in every corner of the world. It was no longer just a fight for survival. It was a fight for Earth's future. The first real victory came when the Resistance managed to capture an Empire warship during a daring raid. They infiltrated one of the Empire's supply convoys and took control of the ship's systems. Using the stolen technology, they began to reverse engineer the weapons that the Empire had been using against them. The knowledge they gained would prove invaluable in the coming battles, but even as the Resistance gained ground, they knew that the final confrontation with the Empire was inevitable, and the cost of victory would be high. They were not just fighting to reclaim their planet, they were fighting for the future of humanity, and they would stop at nothing to ensure that Earth would remain free from the Empire's grasp. The Empire's elite soldiers were formidable, and their technology seemed invincible, but humanity had something the Empire could never understand: resilience and creativity. The Resistance had learned from every confrontation, and with each battle they became more resourceful and cunning. They began to turn the tide, using the Empire's own weapons against them in ways they never could have predicted. The stolen warship was the key. It wasn't just a symbol of their first real victory, it was the catalyst for everything that followed. They had studied the alien technology for weeks and were now able to replicate it and even improve upon it. The Resistance built weapons that could neutralize the Empire's energy shields and created new armor that could withstand the Empire's most destructive attacks. With these innovations, the Resistance launched a series of surprise attacks on the Empire's remaining strongholds. In the process, they liberated entire cities from alien control. The Empire didn't take kindly to these defeats. Their retaliation was swift and violent, but the Resistance was no longer afraid. They had seen what was possible when humanity worked together, when they fought with everything they had. The Resistance's operations began to move faster now, no longer confined to small sabotage missions. They started hitting larger Empire bases and production facilities across the globe, each mission more dangerous than the last. But every victory brought them closer to their ultimate goal. The most significant of these operations was a daring assault on one of the Empire's largest weapons factories. It was located deep within an underground complex guarded by hundreds of alien soldiers. But the Resistance knew this was their chance to cripple the Empire's ability to wage war on Earth. The assault team moved under the cover of darkness, infiltrating the complex with military precision. Once inside, they planted explosives on key infrastructure and sent a signal that would destroy the Empire's weapons stockpiles. When the explosion went off, it sent shockwaves through the Empire's command network, cutting off their access to critical supplies and causing widespread panic among their forces. The Empire's retaliation was inevitable and brutal, but it was clear that their grip on Earth was beginning to slip. They had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt and fight back, and now they were paying the price. But even as the Resistance tasted victory, the shadow of the Empire still loomed large. Salter was not a leader to accept defeat quietly. His pride and sense of superiority would never allow him to abandon the planet without trying to crush humanity's spirit once and for all. The Empire began to shift its tactics, focusing less on direct combat and more on psychological warfare. They spread fear and misinformation across the planet, turning humans against one another, hoping to sow distrust and weaken the Resistance from within. But humanity's resolve was unshaken. They had seen too much destruction and sacrifice to give in. Now the Resistance was stronger than ever. United in their cause, they began to turn the psychological tactics of the Empire against them, using their own propaganda methods to boost morale and spread the truth about what the Empire had done to their world. With each passing day, the Empire's hold on Earth weakened, and humanity's defiance grew bolder. Every success added fuel to the fire that would ultimately ignite the final battle for Earth's future. As the Resistance grew stronger, the Empire's desperation became apparent. Salter knew his forces were faltering and his dreams of conquering Earth were slipping away. He ordered a devastating planetary bombardment targeting Earth's largest cities with the intent to break humanity's spirit and force them into submission. The first wave hit Los Angeles. The city that had once symbolized the dream of human progress was reduced to rubble in a matter of minutes. The people were caught off guard, and entire neighborhoods were wiped out in a violent flash of energy. The destruction was immense, and the world watched in horror as the Empire made it clear that there would be no mercy. But this show of power had the opposite effect of what Salter intended. The devastation galvanized the world's population into action. It wasn't fear that gripped humanity now, it was rage and defiance. The loss of Los Angeles became the rallying cry for the Resistance across the globe. People from all walks of life came together to fight back. Civilians, volunteers, and former soldiers all joined the cause as they witnessed the horror inflicted upon their fellow humans. They knew they had no choice but to resist the Empire's tyranny. Governments that had once hesitated now threw their full support behind the Resistance and began to coordinate global efforts to fight back the tide of Empire invaders. was turning. The Resistance knew they had to strike quickly before the Empire could regroup. General Maria Torres knew the next move had to be decisive. They had to hit the heart of the Empire's operation and cripple their ability to continue the assault on Earth. The Resistance launched a daring raid on one of the Empire's central command ships, a massive war vessel that was responsible for coordinating the Empire's forces across the planet. If they could capture or destroy this ship, they would sever the Empire's communication lines and cripple its military command structure. But the mission was risky. No one knew what kind of defenses the ship had or what kind of alien technology lay within its walls. But the Resistance couldn't afford to back down. They had to act. The team moved in with precision, infiltrating the massive warship under the cover of night. They had to bypass high-tech security systems and avoid the Empire's most elite soldiers. The tension was palpable. Every moment felt like it could be their last. But the team pressed on, guided by their determination to protect Earth. As they reached the heart of the ship, they planted explosives on key communication hubs and critical systems. Their hearts raced, knowing that if they were caught, there would be no escape. The moment the explosives were set, they triggered the countdown and began to make their way to the escape route. But just as they were about to leave, they encountered a squad of Empire soldiers. The battle was fierce and close quarters as both sides fought for control of the ship. In the chaos, the Resistance team managed to escape, but not without suffering losses. The mission was a success, but it had come at a cost. The Empire's communication was shattered, and their military forces were thrown into disarray. But the victory was bittersweet. The cost of their bravery weighed heavily on them, and they knew the next battle would be even more perilous. The Resistance had struck a powerful blow, but the Empire would not surrender without a fight. The final confrontation was coming, and the fate of humanity hung in the balance. Despite the Resistance's hard-earned victory, the Empire refused to back down. Salter's rage was uncontainable. His pride had been wounded, and he was determined to make humanity pay for defying him. The Empire's response came quickly. As the remnants of their fleet gathered in space, they began launching strikes against Earth's military bases and communication hubs with renewed fury. This time, they were using a new weapon, a devastating planetary cannon that could target any location with pinpoint accuracy. The first strike hit Rio de Janeiro with such force that it shattered the city into nothingness. The shockwave was felt across the globe, and people knew that the Empire was about to unleash hell on Earth. It was no longer a fight for territory or control. This was a war of annihilation. The Empire wanted to break humanity's will and leave nothing behind. But ashes. The Resistance was shaken by the brutal strike, but it only strengthened their resolve. They could no longer afford to fight in the shadows. They had to confront the Empire directly. The time for covert operations was over now. It was a war of survival. Maria Torres knew that to win they had to cripple the Empire once and for all, but to do so they would need more than just guerrilla tactics. They would need to hit the heart of the Empire's power base and destroy the source of its strength. She gathered her team and began to formulate a plan so bold and dangerous that it could either lead to their ultimate victory or their complete destruction. They needed to take the fight to the Empire's homeworld, disrupt its command center, and cut off its resources. If they succeeded, they could put an end to the war and force the Empire to retreat. But to get there, they would need to infiltrate the heavily guarded fleet and make their way through space undetected. The mission was fraught with risk, but the alternative was worse. They would never know peace until the Empire was gone. The Resistance worked tirelessly, preparing for the final assault. As they constructed a fleet of their own using salvaged Empire technology and human ingenuity, they designed a series of stealth ships capable of evading detection and slipping past the Empire's defenses. The fleet would consist of the best and brightest soldiers and engineers from every corner of Earth. Each ship was equipped with advanced weapons that could match the Empire's most powerful forces. Maria Torres stood at the helm of the mission, knowing that this could be their last chance to end the war. But even as they prepared for the final assault, the Empire was not sitting idly by. Salter had begun to rally his forces from across the galaxy, bringing in reinforcements from every corner of the Empire's domain. He was determined to destroy the resistance and make Earth a symbol of his power. He was no longer interested in negotiation or subjugation. He wanted total domination. He sent his fleet to intercept the resistance's ships before they could even reach their destination, knowing that if he could eliminate them before they reached the heart of the Empire, it would be the end of humanity's fight for freedom. The battle for Earth's survival had come to its most dangerous and decisive moment. The resistance was ready to make their move, but would they be able to break through the Empire's defenses and end the war, or would Xalter's wrath be their final undoing? The final battle began as the Resistance fleet emerged from the depths of space, heading toward the heart of the Empire's homeworld. The tension was thick as the ships moved in formation, knowing that they were facing the might of the Empire's best forces. The Resistance knew this would be their greatest test. Their only hope of survival was to break through the Empire's defenses and strike at the command center where the true power of the Empire lay. Xalter's fleet met them head-on in the cold emptiness of space. It was a battle unlike anything humanity had ever seen, a clash of titanic forces where every shot counted, and the fate of millions hung in the balance. The Empire unleashed its full firepower in a series of brilliant flashes as beams of energy tore through the vastness of space. Their ships were massive and armed with weapons that could obliterate entire fleets with a single shot, but the Resistance fought with everything they had. Humanity's fleet was smaller, but they had the advantage of speed and precision. Their ships darted in and out of the enemy's fire, dodging blasts and returning shots with deadly accuracy. The sound of explosions echoed in the emptiness of space as both sides exchanged fire. The battle raged on for hours with neither side giving an inch. But as the fighting continued, it became clear that the Resistance was making headway. Their stealth ships had managed to bypass the Empire's outer defenses, and now they were targeting the Empire's most vulnerable points. Their mission was clear: disable the Empire's command center and cripple their ability to coordinate the battle. But the closer they got to their target, the more intense the Resistance became. Xalter himself took command of the final defense lines, determined to stop humanity from reaching the heart of his empire. His ships surged forward, blocking the path of the Resistance with ferocious force. It became clear that the final confrontation was upon them. The Resistance fleet had to make a choice. They could either continue fighting the Empire's ships and risk being wiped out, or make a desperate dash for the command center and try to finish the fight once and for all. With no time to waste, Maria Torres made the decision to push forward. Her fleet broke through the enemy lines and charged toward the planet's surface. The Empire responded with all of its might, launching wave after wave of fighters and warships to intercept them. The skies were filled with laser fire and explosions as both sides fought for control of the space above the Empire's homeworld. But the Resistance pressed on through the chaos, their destination in sight. They had only one chance to succeed, and they knew that any mistake would cost them everything. As the Resistance forces neared the Empire's command center, Xalter unleashed his final trump card. He activated a massive planetary defense system capable of launching devastating weapons at any incoming target. The sky was lit with flashes of energy as the Empire fired on the Resistance with everything they had. But the Resistance fleet was not deterred. They pushed forward through the firestorm with their sights set on the heart of the Empire. Their final assault was now imminent as they prepared to launch their attack on the Empire's command center. The fate of humanity rested in the hands of those brave enough to make this final stand. Would the Resistance succeed in toppling the Empire, or would they be wiped out in one final, catastrophic blow? The final assault was upon them as the Resistance fleet surged forward through the firestorm of enemy fire. The fate of Earth hung in the balance. Maria Torres led the charge, knowing that every moment brought them closer to either victory or destruction. The Empire's planetary defense system fired relentlessly, but the Resistance dodged and weaved through the onslaught. With calculated precision, their ships were fast and agile, but they couldn't avoid the fire forever. With each passing second, they came closer to the heart of the Empire and closer to the final confrontation. As they neared the planet's surface, the Resistance knew they had no other choice but to press forward. There was no retreat, no second chance. This was the endgame, and they would fight with everything they had. The Empire had thrown everything into this final defense, But humanity was relentless. They had come too far to stop now. Maria's heart pounded as she gave the final order to her fleet: push forward to the command center. She knew that if they failed, the world they had fought to protect would be lost forever. The Resistance fleet charged ahead, their ships streaking across the sky like streaks of light. The Empire's defenses unleashed another wave of fire, but the Resistance pressed through with fury. Their target was in sight, a massive structure looming on the planet's surface, the Empire's command center, the heart of their power. It was heavily guarded by a wall of defense ships and automated turrets, but the Resistance had prepared for this moment. They had taken every possible step to ensure success. Using the stolen technology they had learned to bypass the Empire's security and disable its defenses. One by one, the Resistance ships swooped in and began to assault the command center, firing powerful weapons at its outer defenses. The Empire responded with all of its might, sending out wave after wave of reinforcements to protect its last stronghold. But it was clear that the Empire was running out of options. The Resistance had already taken down most of their defensive lines, and their command center was now vulnerable. The Resistance pressed in closer with every attack. As they hit the heart of the Empire's control system, they finally breached the inner sanctum of the command center, and Maria's team was on the verge of delivering the final blow. She stood at the center of the control room, knowing that one shot would end the war and free humanity from the Empire's grip. With a single command, the Resistance fired their most powerful weapon at the command center. A blinding explosion rocked the planet's surface as the Empire's heart was torn apart. The shockwave rippled through the Empire's forces, and their communication systems collapsed. It was over. The Empire was no more. Xalter's reign of terror had come to an end. Humanity had won the war, but at great cost. The destruction was everywhere. The once proud cities lay in ruins. The world had been forever changed, but the Resistance had succeeded. Earth was free. The people of Earth looked up at the stars with new hope. They had been tested and had endured. They had faced the might of an empire and had risen above it. Maria Torres looked to the sky, her eyes filled with both sorrow and triumph, knowing that the fight for humanity's future had been won. But the journey was far from over. The rebuilding would take time, and the scars of war would remain. But for the first time in generations, the people of Earth stood united with the knowledge that they had overcome the greatest challenge their world had ever faced, and that no empire would ever again threaten their freedom.